As you work through the chapter and some of the other material on organizational culture, I wanted to share some of my own experience with organizational culture as both an employee and also a manager and a leader in different organizations. One of my examples comes from the work that I was doing working for a large bank in Tokyo, Japan, where most of my team were from Japan, had grown up and been educated and worked in Japan most of their lives. So, of course, the way this organizational culture was constructed needed to take into account the national cultural nuances of Japan. One of the things, of course, that I've done not only in this environment, but also in other situations, is had a monthly meeting where all of the different levels of employees, from the senior most manager down to the um, newest hire in the company who might be just starting out in his or her career, a meeting where all of the employees, regardless of rank or hierarchy, could attend. And at those monthly meetings, it would be a good time for everyone to reflect upon the mission, the vision, and the objectives that pulled us all together, right? The reason that all of us were coming into work every day. So it was a chance for people to be reminded what the objectives of the company actually are, but more importantly, how their jobs link directly to those objectives. So what we would do on my management team is we would set aside 1 hour per month for all of the teams to come together in a large room. And I would start the meeting by going through each of the objectives, which never changed. They were always the same from month to month. But I would select examples from the prior month that really showed how each of the teams were helping achieve those objectives. So you can imagine if you as an employee see something that your team has done over the past month and how it links directly with each objective, you yourself should have a stronger sense of purpose when it comes to how your job and how your work and how your effort links with the objectives of the company. Sometimes we would even ask an employee or a representative from one of those teams after I'm done speaking to actually present for 5 or 10 minutes and go through exactly how their team succeeded in their objective, or in some cases, how their team had to navigate carefully through some difficulties in order to meet the particular objective. And you'll remember from the module on national culture that sometimes the way you approach these things is different depending on the national culture you're in. Anyone who knows something about the Japanese culture knows that it is largely collectivist, meaning it is not as individual as the United States typically is. What does that mean? Well, it means that at meetings such as the one I'm talking about, you need to be very careful not to shine the spotlight on any one individual. So, for example, if one employee did a great job, you probably don't want to be as direct as you would be in the United States, saying, please stand up, everybody, give her a round of applause. She did a great job. Typically in Japan, you would do the opposite. You would single out the team as opposed to the individual. So at these meetings, we needed to be very cautious about making sure that the team received the collectivist recognition. The biggest benefit was probably showing employees how their work contributes directly to the goals of the company. So one important part of organizational culture is, does the organization communicate? Does the organization explain its objectives? Does the organization create a sense of purpose by linking everyone's contribution to the objective or the goal of the company itself? Other examples, some of these are small, some of these are big, but other examples of organizational culture in places I have worked could be things as simple as the tone that the management sets for small things. For example, I worked at a financial technology company, not as a manager, but as an employee early in my career. And the management made breakfast, free breakfast available every morning. I think it was from like 7 o'clock until like 10 o'clock. And it was a signal that it was okay for employees to, especially employees who came into work early, it was okay for them to spend 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the cafeteria area, speaking with a colleague, maybe getting ready for their day, maybe having a business discussion over a cup of coffee and some breakfast. And it was a signal that tried to increase collaboration and also tried to make employees feel a bit more at home in the culture. Okay, so something as small as the company paying for breakfast certainly sent a signal to us. That very same company also had a culture of investing in the education of its employees. And if you, as an employee, were studying a subject in college or graduate school that would help the company improve, maybe you were studying finance and the company needed more people who were skilled in finance, or maybe you were studying management and the company needed more people with management skills. The company would pay for your tuition, provided that your grades were good. So you were incentivized to get good grades because you knew that if you got good grades, the company would pay you for your tuition bill. As opposed to if you got bad grades, you would have to pay on your own. So tuition reimbursement was one of the motivators, one of the aspects of organizational culture that motivated some employees like myself. The other thing you see in good organization cultures is when teams do a good job, or when you win, when you accomplish something, celebrating those wins. Celebrating those wins could be as informal as a pizza lunch, for example, or it can be as elaborate as a larger event, maybe a large dinner. Maybe that dinner is followed by awards for people. It could be as elaborate as or as incentivizing as paying people extra for their wins if they do a good job, maybe in the form of a bonus. But somehow celebrating the wins as a team is an aspect of organizational culture that you should be aware of. And the last thing I'll mention, good organizations tend to have what we call mobility with employees. And mobility has two directions, right? So if you are very, very good at your job, and if you are, for example, educating yourself, and if you're, for example, demonstrating that you're capable of moving up to more senior positions in the company, then good organizational cultures will try to promote people from within rather than always hiring from the outside. Okay, so that's vertical mobility. The second type of mobility is called lateral mobility. Lateral means you might, for example, be hired into a company as an accounting person, but you may, after a few years, show interest in learning a little bit more about a different group, maybe the marketing or advertising group. So lateral mobility means that the company will offer you the ability to shift to a different job in a different department if you are qualified and if you show the right skill sets. And I've come from companies that offered this quite a bit, where some of my colleagues spent 3 or 4 years in one part of the company, then they expressed an interest in doing something different within the company, and they were able to move to different teams, sometimes to 3 or 4 different teams during the course of their career. So an organizational culture that promotes mobility, both vertical and lateral, is also something for you to keep your eyes on for the future.